So the next presentation is going to be going over exciting clinical trial prospects, including a actively being developed platform trial. We're gonna have Dr. Mitesh Borad and then Meredith Buxton from GCAR are both going to speak. Are you speaking together or coming up one at a time? One at a time. Dr. Mitesh Borad.
Okay, well, good afternoon. Thanks to the audience for hanging in there on day 2 with such tremendous enthusiasm. This is definitely my favorite conference of all the hundreds I've been to. It's probably the only one that has direct patient engagement, and that's so incredible to see. So on behalf of a very large team, I'd like to provide some updates on the International Cholangiocarcinoma Research Network. Next slide. Okay, so this network was formed at this conference about 7 years ago due to a fortuitous discussion at a coffee break. And just a word of caution, only give Stacy ideas if you're prepared to work on it, because so a need was identified, given that it was felt that this was a somewhat less common disease, that we would want to work together across centers, across investigators, across researchers, across the world to, as the mission statement says, rapidly translate discoveries into practice so that they can start benefiting patients. And we would need a facile, agile, collaborative network to accomplish that. So you can see that it has lived up to its name. This is very much international in nature. We do have to get to Australia to get to all the highly inhabited continents, but otherwise you can see that it does have a fairly significant global presence across the very many specialties that patients get their care through. You can see that there's engagement across many, many countries. We have representation here at this conference that mirrors what you see here in this network, both at the level of researchers, but also at the level of patients. So thank you for all of those who came from great distances to be at this meeting. Over the years, while we were initially a bit more nimble, we felt that it had grown to a point where it may make sense to try to provide some additional structure to the network. I'll go through some of the committees that have emanated as a result of this, and you can see them highlighted here. I'll go through sort of their functions one by one as well. So of course we want to continue onboarding new members from areas of the world, from parts of the country, so that patients ultimately have someone local that they can turn to who is engaged and knowledgeable about the efforts. To facilitate that, of course, we would have a membership and communications committee. This committee is also tasked with all kinds of communications, not just with colleagues, but also with trainees, with the media, and most importantly with patients, their families, and caregivers. There's a Meet the Expert section on the webpage, which may provide you the bios of people who have been engaged in this field, like Dr. Sahai and others you've heard from, who have spent their entire careers caring for patients who have this illness. The Scientific Programming Committee would, of course, be tasked with organizing conferences such as the one we have here right now. But besides this conference, you can see that there are many other events, including an event we've done in the Asia-Pacific region for many years. You can see the first couple that occurred there that were in Thailand, and then over the years in Taiwan, Korea, Japan, and other venues. We also have, of course, ad hoc meetings at conferences that other societies organize, and the foundation has been extremely active in making sure that there's a meaningful presence there as well. Last year, we put together a think tank called C²T², Cure Cholangiocarcinoma Think Tank. And the purpose for doing this was to stop trying to make incremental advances. We wanted to be able to come to you here every year and say we've made more tectonic shifts. And we weren't going to be able to do that just by the community we already had in place. And as such, C²T² was an opportunity to put together domain experts in this community along with people who had developed platforms or other technologies and were sort of outside-the-box thinkers to see if we could apply it to make advances in cholangiocarcinoma and at a more tectonic level, not incremental. So shown here is a group photo of the inaugural think tank. Hopefully we continue this on a regular basis, and hopefully we don't have too many of them so that we can bring these ideas into advances that can be used in everyday practice to help patients on a significant scale. Two themes had emerged from this meeting. We used precision medicine as our anchor, and you've heard a lot during this meeting about precision therapies and biomarkers and drugs that would hopefully be less toxic and the right ones for the right patient. But we also recognize that we will make much bigger advances if we also have a significant effort in early detection. So you can see precision, early diagnostics, and prevention was a critical theme of this meeting in addition to therapeutics. I'm very delighted to mention to everyone at the conference that from the generosity of the many donors to the foundation and other funding sources that we were able to garner, we have been able to fund both of these efforts, and they have already been launched and work is underway. So we're trying not to waste even a single day when we want to make these advances. Okay, the Industry and Biopharma Committee, of course, has been very instrumental in engaging with our colleagues and partners in the pharmaceutical and biotech industries. They have been wonderful colleagues with us to align our mission to fit the mission with biopharma to help patients so that we can have advances again on a consistent basis. And as was highlighted in the very first talk by Stacy, as the conference was open, now we have 5 therapies that we didn't when these efforts were first underway. A new model was developed as part of this. Many companies engage people from the community to provide them with advice on how to best develop their therapies, and typically this is done through advisory boards. So through, again, a very generous action taken by the members of this community, people felt that we could donate these proceeds towards the efforts of the kind I just showed, and instead of that money going into things where there wouldn't be direct benefit to the research community and ultimately to patients, we were able to raise funds that we would have otherwise not been able to. So again, I want to thank everybody who took this initiative and for this kind generosity to make this happen. So $100,000 was raised last year, and that went to the projects that I just showed from the cholangiocarcinoma think tank. There has been a lot of interest from the biopharma community. I think when Stacy, as Stacy mentioned, when it was the early days, this slide would be totally empty. Even if you tried, even if you paid for dinner yourself, you couldn't get them to come. So now things have certainly changed, and we're very appreciative of all our colleagues in industry for thinking of this patient community and wanting to make a difference. We've had industry forums like the ones we've had at this meeting, where we can leverage the presence of experts that come from all over the world to this meeting and allow for colleagues in industry to get guidance on the best way to develop their therapy. So this has very much become the destination for patients, researchers, and biopharma to come to try to make a difference. We, with COVID, also leveraged sort of the power of Zoom and the internet to do virtual advisory boards. This has also been a tremendous cost saver, and more biopharma partners are using this mechanism to run their advisory boards. We have a data committee, which means there's a lot of data. In fact, it's not just big data, it's huge data. And a lot of this data is not just sort of demographic and clinical data. As genetic and genomic analyses are being done, a tremendous amount of data is being generated from each person's genome, from their contributions, in order to make meaning of this data so that it can help other patients. We are hoping that this committee can engage the right folks, both internally and externally, to convert this data into knowledge. The career growth, education, and engagement of the next generation is absolutely critical. And as highlighted in many previous talks, and from the generosity of donors, both small and big, keeping the next generation engaged and growing in this arena will be critical in order to ensure that we maintain the momentum, that we have the advances, and hopefully the huge successes we're looking for. We've been very fortunate to partner with our colleagues in Europe in this regards. So the European Network for the Study of Cholangiocarcinoma, ENSCA, has been a tremendous partner. We've had a mentorship program with them. We've had a Meet the Emerging Leaders program as part of our collaboration with the Communications Committee. All the research fellowships and other initiatives have also, again, helped advance the careers of these folks, but more importantly, keep them engaged in helping patients with cholangiocarcinoma. So again, thanks to everyone in the audience as well for this. Dissemination of knowledge is critical, and preservation of knowledge is critical. So a few years ago, we felt that it would be an exciting endeavor to have experts come and give webinars, not so much in a lecturing fashion, but in an engaging, as Stacy likes to say, fireside chat format, where there's significant discussion between the speaker, the moderator, and the audience. And there are a series of such webinars listed on the website, again, for the perusal of anyone who may want to learn specifically about a nuanced or general topic for cholangiocarcinoma. And we hope that this will just become an ever-growing collection that serves as a source that can be disseminated everywhere. With all the generous donations folks have made, grants can be afforded to both the emerging generation and folks who are sort of in that mid-career range and senior investigators. Largely we're focused on the new generation, but the time and generosity of the Grant Review Committee ensures that the best science, the best ideas are supported in the fairest way and in the most transparent manner. And this would, of course, be very critical to how the foundation is perceived and to ensure that there's confidence amongst the many donors who support these efforts. You can see that there's been far and wide reach of the funds that have been generously allocated, and this has been highlighted earlier today. I want to talk about a new model briefly. So most clinical trials are somewhat patient-centric, but truly they're drug-centric or biopharma sponsor-centric, and to some degree investigator-centric. There's always this feel that, oh, that trial's done, so-and-so is leading them, they'll come here or elsewhere to present them. That isn't the purpose of the trials. The purpose of the trials is to provide early access to patients so that they can have an advantage in beating this illness. As such, what I show here is the collective work of a huge number of people, and this is a patient-centric model. We have all kinds of things available in the same model, where targeted therapies are available, drugs that don't require a biomarker are available, something for patients who have resistant diseases available, patients who need their first systemic treatments is available. So it's all in a single model, and we're hoping that this becomes a way in which industry will engage with patients, and that we think of the patients first and not last. Okay, again, I want to thank everyone for their attention. I want to give a big shout out to Nilo Azad, who's been my co-chair in this journey the last few years. Also want to thank Stacy, Riham Abdel Wahab, Wendy Seelig, Ash Patel, who just joined, and the entire executive committee shown here for their hundreds and hundreds of hours of selfless dedication to ensure that everything I showed can happen. Thank you again.